out in theaters now. It was released this past weekend, and I finally got the chance to see it. In 1979, a group of young filmmakers set out to make an adult film in a secluded farmhouse in rural Texas. Their reclusive, elderly hosts take a special interest in their young guests, and as night falls in, the couple's leering interest takes a violent turn. I've heard nothing but buzz about this movie, and A24 has really delivered on different types of horror films. I mean, Hereditary is great. Midsummer is great. It Comes at Night, I think, is underrated. These types of horror films that aren't necessarily funded by major Hollywood studios, but smaller studios like A24 really are an attempt to give filmmakers creative control and a creative vision and have their vision told. Whereas I feel like a movie like this if it was like Netflix or Warner Brothers or Sony or something, it just would have been like, yeah, just make a mainstream, easily accessible horror film, which this is not. And people are probably going to go into this being like, you know what, hey, did you hear about that movie X? That movie that released in theaters this week? You know what it is? Porn! Trust me, there's only like 2 sequences of like, oh shit, they're getting it on right now, okay. This literally is a porno released to theaters. There's only like 2 scenes of that. What makes this movie so good for me is that elevated horror, or is it art house horror? Or art house and elevated meshed into the same thing? I would assume so. Art house horror has become a huge norm now, and I'm loving everything we're getting from art house horror, especially A24. Ty West directs this movie, and you can tell he has a passion and a love for classic horror movies. It really harkens back to classic horror movies, especially older slashers from the late 70s, early to mid 80s. Movies like that takes a lot of inspiration without ripping any of them off. The actors and actresses in this movie are really good in their roles. Jenna Ortega doesn't really have all that much to do, and shout out to Jenna Ortega too. She is like the new Scream Queen. She is this generation's Scream Queen. She's just ruling 2022 right now. I especially enjoyed her performance because she doesn't say all that much. She's a very quiet and subdued character, and you learn a lot about her from how little she speaks. The minimal dialogue for her character is the character development for her character, and I'll get back more to the characters in a minute, but I thought that she played that magnificently, and it really conveyed every aspect of her character in a 3-dimensional way without being so in your face about it. It was a lot more subtle character development with her character. There are some brutal kills in here too. There were some actual jump scary moments for me. There were moments where it's like, it was those moments where I try to pinpoint exactly when the loud bang or crash or the noise is gonna happen, and then it happens a split second later and I jump. But I do think that they were actually legit jump scares, and I don't know if that's because the actual speakers in the movie theater are like freaking loud now. This wasn't even in Dolby, and that was, god damn it, that was loud. It could just be that the theater that I went to, the AMC that I went to, is a lot nicer than the AMC in downtown Boston, or the one in downtown Boston if you go to, and it's not in IMAX or Dolby. The literal theater is just like this with the speaker. They only have it on the front. You can't even hear a goddamn word they're saying. So maybe that was that, because I went to the nicer theater, but it was loud, it was brutal. There were some creative kills in here, some creative kills I didn't really think. I actually thought that the kills were going to be a little bit more bloody and a little bit more gory and a little bit more brutal, but nevertheless, they were still good. I think that this movie is going to be a detriment towards mainstream audiences, because they're going to look at this and be like, oh, they're filming an adult film and it's a horror film. What a great combo. So we get to see all of the cliches of horror movies in one movie. For many viewers, the first half, or the first hour, I would say, is going to feel like a slow burn. For me, it never felt like that. This entire thing flew by, to the point where I was having a lot of fun with the second half, where all the crazy, brutal kills start to happen. I don't think mainstream audiences nowadays realize that you have to build tension in a horror movie. You have to have non-stop tension and suspense in a horror movie, not non-stop blood and gore. It's like an action movie. Like, why do people gravitate towards shitty action movies nowadays? Because it's non-stop action. But the best action movies are the ones that are non-stop tension. Some of the 1990s action movies I give a pass to. However, when it comes to how action movies from the mid-2000s redefined action movies nowadays, that's really what we look at now. At least that's how I see it. And now how I see it with horror movies, especially in the slasher genre, it's not just about the blood and the guts and the kills and all that. Like, sure, that's part of the fun of watching them, but you also have to take into account the characters, the directing, the production design. Everything that makes a film should still be there. I think this film does a really great job at making these characters feel secluded and isolated and away from everyone. Like, they feel desperate. They feel like there is no help around. They are left to their own devices, and that's what I love about horror movies like this. Whereas I feel as if this was released by a mainstream studio, it would have been way too easy to escape some of these situations that they're put into. This movie also has to say some things about ageism. Young versus old. The older couple in this movie has a lot to say about the younger generation. And that was a surprising social commentary that I didn't expect this movie to provide. I guess where the movie falters slightly for me is the rest of the characters that round out the cast. The acting isn't bad at all, especially from Kid Cudi. Whoever thought that Kid Cudi would be in a movie like this and actually turn in a good performance? I guess aside from Jenna Ortega's subdued performance, because that's what that character called for, the rest of the characters don't have anything going on for them. You don't dislike a single one of them. They're just kind of there. They just feel like chess pieces put on the board that are eventually going to be taken out. You know, they just feel like cookie-cutter, expendable characters that you don't really get to know all that much. And then they die and it's like, okay, well, he or she's dead. I did like them, but that's that. That is my only issue with X. I thought that this was a brilliant art house horror film that harkened back to slasher films of old, with great performances all across the board from the cast, especially from Jenna Ortega, dealing with social commentary like ageism, and giving these characters a sense of isolation and desperation really elevated these situations to feel dire. I'm going to say I really enjoyed X with a full bucket of popcorn. So guys, have you seen X? If you have, drop me some feedback in the comment section below as to what you thought of the movie. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.